Hey, what's going on, everybody? You're listening to the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Cliff, and today I have another special guest with us. I have social media strategist. She has worked with HBO, the NFL, NBC Universal, BET, Rotten Tomatoes, YouTube, Stars, among other clients. Yulia Gonzalez. How are you doing, Yulia?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Thank you for also taking time out of your schedule to come on the same show. I'm super excited to have the conversation that we're going to have today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
So, really quick, before I introduce the topics, I want to take a moment to shout out all of our listeners and all of our followers on social media. Thank you guys. Love you guys. And everybody in all 60 plus countries around the world really means a lot. Thank you guys for continuing to like, share, and subscribe and spread the word about Sane Show. Really means a lot. And if you're listening and you don't already follow us, be sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter at sane underscore show. Again, that's sane, SANE underscore show. And then you can find us on Facebook. That's Sane Show. Again, on Facebook, Sane Show. So today we're going to have a conversation about humanizing brands. Following that, we're going to have a discussion about celebrity influencers. And then following those two discussions, we're going to have an interview with you, Yulia, so that I can ask you some questions and the listeners and I can learn more about you, the things that you do, and all the fun things that go along with that.
Thank you. I'm really excited.
Cool, I am too. So let's go ahead and hop right into it with our first topic, humanizing brands. So, we've had quite a few conversations at this point, and I found this to be very unique and interesting concept, especially because, like I said to you before, with corporations, especially, we look at them or we treat them as far as politics and the tax code. We treat them like people, and so when I think about humanizing brands, it's like, okay, cool. Especially with these Fortune 500 companies, we treat you like people, and now it's time for you to start acting like people. And so when we talk about humanizing brands, with this whole concept, I think you really opened my mind with this one. And really, just would like for you to give the listeners a little bit more insight into this concept, which again was really mind blowing to me, especially with all the conversations that we've had leading up to this recording. So if you could, go ahead and speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So I started working in social media about 10 years ago. This was like before Facebook was even open to the public. It was still college students were still using it mostly. YouTube was, I think it was right before YouTube was purchased by Google. And so my job, I helped raise $500,000 in venture capital for a how-to video startup. And so my job was a marketing assistant. That was my first job ever in the corporate world and just in social media. And social media wasn't even a job. So that was my title. And so my goal was to figure out how do I get people on this website. And so that's how I found out a lot about social media and understanding how brands need to be more human. So initially, if you think about the 90s and how before the internet, brands were just promoting to people. They were talking at people. So if you see you were as a kid, you watching television, watching your favorite cartoons, and then here comes a commercial interrupting your experience, and you have to sit there and watch it. You can change the channel, but you're probably going to get another commercial, and then you go back to your programming. But what the internet did is it created a space where people are no longer being broadcast to. People are now creators of content. That's what YouTube is. That's what all these social media platforms are. Basically, it's people, it's humans creating content and being media. And so now that humans are competing at the same level as these brands, other people prefer to get information from other humans. And so it's really important as a brand to understand how can you communicate with your consumers, with people that you're talking to on social media in the most human way possible. Because let's say you have a social media post. Let's give an example for Instagram. I'm scrolling through my feed and I see a post about one of my cousins. She's she's hanging out with her friends. Well, maybe not with masks. And and it
Mm-hmm.
has like a fun copy or caption, and it says something fun and interesting, and I'm like, oh my god, I love her outfit, it's so cute. I click on it, I say a comment like, oh my god, your outfit is so cute. And then here comes another picture, and it's a promotional ad or a promotional post by a brand, and it's just like, buy my product. And I'm just like, okay, bye. And I keep scrolling, and I see friends, family, and friends and family, and here comes somebody else interrupting my experience, right? And so these brands, what they're doing is they're using tactics from 1999 on social media, and that is so dated. And so it's so important for brands to know, how do I talk to these human beings who are experienced, like, you're competing against my cousin. So how am I, who I have a relationship with, a real human relationship with. So how as a brand are you going to compete with my cousin or my friends or my boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever? How are you going to compete against that? And so my goal is to make brands human. So what I do is I have a workbook, and basically in my workbook, I take brands through the process of becoming human. And this is something that I've developed over 10 years being on social media, and being a social media strategist, working with different brands. Is I have a questionnaire, and within this questionnaire, we just basically give birth to this human brand. Just like, me, my parents, they got married and they had me, and I'm here and I'm born, right? So it's the same thing. And my story, whatever my story is as a person. So brands also have a story. So what is their story? Because interrupting my experience isn't going to be the best strategy. The best strategy is giving birth to these brands. And you have these brands like Wendy's, Hydro Flask. You have different brands who have a really great brand story, and they know how to tell it on social media. And so how did they do that? Well, you have to give birth to this brand. So it's basically what I do is I take brands through this process where so a lot of the brands that you mentioned initially, I worked on different TV shows and movies with most of those brands. Also, we're running different campaigns, and I create a deck where I give that person that brand, if it's a TV show or a movie or brand, I give them a personality. I show what are their favorite things,
Mm-hmm.
what do they like to do, how do they like to behave, how do they feel about certain things. So I give them feelings too. Why are they here? What's the purpose? Like, what is this brand's why? Because there has to be more purpose to a brand's purpose than just, I'm trying to make some money. Like, for example, if you ever watch this video called Start With Why, on it's a TED Talk, it's really good. He talks about how Apple did this. Like, Apple's like, their why was something about the status quo and just being like revolutionary. That is their why. So anybody who wants to be revolutionary and innovative buys an Apple product, right? So you tap into the feelings. And so within this questionnaire that I take the people through, I also have them understand what is their why. So why are you doing what you're doing? Are you trying to help people? Are you trying to connect with people?
Right.
These very like philosophical questions for a brand, because you're basically giving birth to this brand. And then I also take them through their feelings. So what do you want people to feel when you connect with this brand? Like Wendy's, for example, they want people to feel like she will take shots at you, she will be funny, she will make playlists, like all these things that Wendy's can do. And so it's the same thing. You don't have to be like rude to people on social media to get attention. You can be a brand that is helpful. I want people to feel inspired. I want people to feel connected. I want people to feel angry. What feelings do you want people to feel when they encounter your content? And so
Right.
all of those things come together to make this brand and this human. And that's like my process, like very quick process of how I do this. Quick overview.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about how brands used to move. I think about, and no knock against these people, but the people that walk around that hand out flyers for like parties or whatever they got going on, and it's just like, okay, you just gave me a piece of paper, because a lot of times you see those things go straight into the garbage right after that. So
Hmm.
like that
Hmm.
would be like a great representation of how these brands look like
Hmm.
when they do what you say they do, as far as interrupting the experience of the
Hmm.
viewer experience or the listener experience, just to try to push their product out to people. So you're
Hmm.
certainly right about that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we're back. Now we're going to have a conversation about celebrity influencers. This is also an interesting one as well. Again, just thinking about what brands have been doing, and oftentimes celebrities get looped into that as well. And you've touched on some things in prior conversations about celebrity influencers, and the question begs if celebrity influencers still have the same kind of influence that they used to. And in my personal opinion, I don't think so. I kind of think of it as assuming that people are that impressionable, especially when you see certain celebrities getting endorsement deals, or being a spokesperson for certain products. And it's like, come on, it's super cheesy. You're not really speaking to any values or whatever. You're just trying to use your image or your influence, or they are, or the company is, to try to bring people in to purchase products. So I think this is definitely worth having a conversation about when we talk about like celebrity influencers, because I mean, yes, there are, in my opinion, there are those that do a good job, leveraging their influence, but obviously they're bringing value to people versus those that aren't. So, I want to go ahead and I want to hear your thoughts on celebrity influencers.
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of going back again to my research when I first started working in social media, well, like as a social media strategist, before social media was a job, was the title. I did a lot of research on on trust parameters. So there was this ebook that I found. My professor recommended it to me back in college. Basically, the information was so impactful to me that it still impacts me to this day. And so basically, it talked about trust, and it mapped out how people trust brands. And it's like a yearly report. I forget the name of it, but it's something about like the trust parameter, and it tracks how much trust people have in brands. And so it tracked that people they were trusting their peers more. So this was like back 10 years ago. So people were and then as I kept looking at this barometer and this research years and years later, every single year you see how peer-to-peer information and peer-to-peer trust got higher and was increasing, while like peer to brand trust kept decreasing. And so it was very interesting because that's where you see the evolution of the influencer. And there's this also, I forget what year it was. I'll have to pull it up, but also it showed how much trust people trusted their peers versus they trusted celebrity endorsements. And so it was really interesting because that is another reason why influencers are really important and celebrity influencers, their value is going down in many ways because people are going to trust a friend over a celebrity, or they're going
Right.
to trust their favorite micro influencer who has 2,000 followers because they have nothing to lose. They're not polished. They don't have this polished image. They're just a regular person that looks like me.
Hmm.
That's why YouTubers and a lot of the MUA influencers did so well initially, is because they were like, I sit in my bedroom and I put makeup on. I'm not a professional, but look what amazing things I can do. Right. And so it made the regular person feel like I don't have to go to LA and go be part of Hollywood so that I could be a superstar. I could do it in my own bedroom. And so that gave people the ability to really feel empowered by influencers, because celebrities then kind of became, that's why celebrity endorsements in many ways don't have as much power as influencer endorsements. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I agree. Especially when I think about certain celebrities, and one of the things with celebrities, especially they're famous. A lot of times they're rich. Most of the time they're rich, really. And
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about like versus YouTubers, and even those YouTubers who are famous, I think about how with celebrities there can be this disconnect because they're in a different place, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love Kevin Hart, but he has a deal with Chase, and I get what he's trying to do. And I think he's doing the best that he can, and I think they're doing it with what they have. They're doing a decent job, but I think sometimes it might be hard for certain individuals to resonate with the message because it's Kevin Hart, multimillionaire, almost working
Mm-hmm.
towards being a billionaire, and
Mm-hmm.
him talking to people about signing up for whatever program that Chase is trying to push through him. So just saying that you are bringing up some really valid points when we talk about, celebrity influencers losing, not having as much influence as they used to.
Yeah, and there's also this report by my Social Blade talks about like the different types of influencers and like the pricing around them, right? And so as a social media person, it's important to look at the influencer space because you have the macro influencers who are the bigger influencers who have millions of followers, and you got the medium-sized influencers who have medium-sized fan bases, and then you have the micro influencers who are like under 2K, 5K, things like that. And so as a brand looking at like Kylie Jenner, for example, she's a celebrity influencer. Maybe she'll charge you $1 million for an ad. But if you look at like the Social Blade report, you can pick somebody at the medium size level, maybe like, 100,000 followers or somebody, and you're going to get the same amount of engagement or even more out of that medium sized influencer than you would out of a macro influencer like a Kylie Jenner or a celebrity. So you're saving money. You're also making an impact because you're supporting people with a smaller audience, but you're also getting like more engagement out of it. Or also a brand, what they can do is also the same amount of money that they were going to spend on a Kylie Jenner, they can spend it on 10, maybe 10 influencers, and then they will be able to get even more engagement out of that money. And so I think it's important because influencers just have that much bigger impact. That's why, like for example, for TikTok, a lot of these TikTokers are now celebrities because they're regular people. And now you see these older celebrities going onto TikTok doing all these dances, at times looking stupid, some of them, not all of them, just looking like they're like following a trend because now they're just aging themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like trying to do these dances, trying to kind of pander to Gen Z or whatever.
Right.
And so I think it's interesting to see kind of like how uncool celebrities have been a little bit more on like TikTok, for example.
Seriously. And again, just further speaking to that disconnect that they have with people, So yeah, you're definitely spot on with that one. Because I look at it too sometimes, like, what are you doing? Why? Stop! You're embarrassing yourself. You're like, I'm embarrassed for you now. So yeah,
Right. And also like because I think brands, I mean, you have the brands that like, the brands that have no face, it's just a brand. And then you have celebrities, but they're also a brand. They also have, marketing, and they also have PR, and they have people manufacturing stories, and they're also like a brand too, you know what I mean? Like the Drake brand, like that's a brand. And like I say, like one of my favorite artists is Drake. It's not Drake the artist of 100%, it's the brand of Drake, right? Because you have all these like ghostwriters, you have all these producers that make him sound incredible. It's not like he probably chose these people, but they're making him, they're speaking through him, and that's what a brand is. So Drake is a great brand too. And so celebrities are on that second. They're like corporations, and then there's like celebrities. And so that's why influencers and being in this human space makes it so much more impactful, because you are making, sometimes when brands make mistakes, and I'm not talking about like racial insensitivity mistakes, I'm just talking about like regular like spelling mistakes, or like posting the wrong thing and then going back and saying, oops, we messed up, like in a cute way, that makes people think, wow, this is a real person, or this is a real, like, you look cool. You look like not everything is polished, and it's okay. Because sometimes I work with brands and they just freak out if something bad happens. And again, not racial insensitivity issues. I'm talking about just other types of mistakes. They'll freak out. But if you just tweet something like, hey, sorry, we misspelled something. Oops, here's the new one. That in many ways increases the trust factor, because the most important thing on social media is trust. How can someone trust you? That is something you cannot buy. That's why these brands are hiring influencers, because people trust them, right? And so trust is the most important currency on social media. And so how do you build that? You have to be more human, and mistakes make you more human. There's a show on it was Westworld, and there's a line, I don't know if you ever watched this show, but where Anthony Hopkins says something like, A mistake is the most important thing nature, like it's the most important thing nature has ever created, because we are built
Hmm.
off mistakes. That's what this is. And so mistakes are okay, because mistakes make you look so human. And for brands, like it's okay to make them. So yeah. That's my little 2 cents.
Thank you for
My little venting of
that.
mistakes.
All right, we're back. Now, Yulia, I'm going to ask you some questions so that the listeners and I can learn more about you, the things that you do, and all the fun and exciting things that go along with that. So I'm going to go ahead and fire off with this first question. You have quite the portfolio and worked with a lot of reputable brands. Which one did you enjoy working with the most and why?
Hmm. I'm trying to think which one I enjoyed the most. I would say I really enjoyed working in radio, when I worked in radio and like building radio station social media accounts. So this is not like the bigger brands, because sometimes with the bigger brands, like you have more red tape and you have to sometimes, like, there's not a lot of freedom you can have in terms of strategy. But I think with radio, my boss was my favorite person. I mean, he's still my mentor to this day. And basically he just let me, again, this is before, like maybe like 8 years ago when I first started in radio. He just let me make mistakes. He let me take over the social media accounts, and I could just do whatever I wanted. And all of my theories and all of my research, I was able to test it on these radio stations. I mean, the reason why I developed How to Make Your Brand Human was because what I did is I made these radio stations human. So when, the top 40 radio station, I think her name was like Ashley, and she had a Honda Civic, and she loved top 40 music. And then we had like Alex, and he was the rhythmic top 40 radio station, and this is what he liked, and these were his favorite things, and he liked football and all this other stuff. And so he really allowed me to be free and to be able to connect with fans. And I learned three very important things in that job. It was There's three reasons why people listen to the radio: one, to hear their favorite song; two, to hear themselves on the radio; and three, to win free stuff. So those three things help me in social media every single day as a social media strategist, because people like to see their favorite things. They like to learn things, right? That's the favorite music, whatever their favorites are. They like to hear themselves on the radio. So people like to be retweeted. People like to be spoken to. People like to be featured. People like all that stuff. And then they win free stuff. People love winning free stuff,
No, that's true.
even if
I'm
it's
sitting
free
here trying not to
information,
bust out in laughs because that's true.
right? Because even if you don't give them something free, you're giving them time. So people like free things. And so those three concepts really helped me in social media strategy to this day because of that job. It was one of my first jobs that I'm just really glad that I got to experience that, because I think I wouldn't have built the foundation that I did if it wasn't for working at that job, where I can just be free to experiment and be myself.
And that's really great to hear. So my next question, your approach, I believe, is a direct reflection of you, Yulia. What kind of reaction do you typically get from clients when humanizing their brand? How is it typically received by them?
Sometimes they don't even get to see it. Sometimes they just get to see the results of it. Depending on the brand, like I won't directly show them the humanizing piece. I just kind of piece it together for myself just to know. Because sometimes, like when I worked at agencies, for example, what I did is I had maybe three or four brands at once. And let's say something was trending on Twitter, like I knew how each brand was going to behave. So I knew how each brand was going to, say something, or how they were going to respond to something trending, because I already had their human in my mind. Like, oh, this human thinks like this, and this human thinks like that. And, this show on BET thinks like this, and this doesn't fit this show on HBO. So it really helped me see how people were going to behave online, or how the brands were going to behave through like trending content and trending topics.
Okay. Older, well established legacy brands that have been around forever struggle to adapt to the current trends. They look weird trying to fit into, as we already discussed. Where should some of these companies even begin when looking to revamp their image?
They should hire me. I'm just kidding.
No, for real, for real.
I think what they should do is really listen to people of color. I think they should really understand how these first of all, they should understand how these social media, when I say brands, making brands human, what I do is, the reason why I say that is because my job is to bring them into the world. I see social media platforms as countries. So you have TikTok country, you have Facebook country, you have Twitter country, and these countries have different customs, they have different languages, they have different ways of doing things, they have different activities that they do on there, right? What you do on Twitter might not work on TikTok. If you post a video of you dancing around, it's not going to work on Twitter. You're not going to trend, you know what I mean? And so it's really important to understand what each country is like. So for my job is to make this brand human so that it can behave in these different countries. And so these legacy brands need to really understand how they could be human first and understand how they're behaving in these countries. Because if they don't, that's when they're going to look dated. That's when they're going to look bad, because they don't understand the landscape they're entering into. They're entering into an avatar world, and they're behaving and they're connecting with real human beings. So it's important to understand that. Like, for example, I know we talked about this because we met on Clubhouse, talked about how it would be so weird if we're all having a really great deep conversation on Clubhouse and here comes Pepsi and saying, interrupting our conversation and saying something like, come buy my drink or whatever. And we're like, Pepsi, you're a troll, get out of here, we'll kick you off the stage because you came to interrupt our experience. And so these brands need to understand how these countries function and how to integrate themselves within the country so that they look like a native and they don't look like a troll. Because
Right.
sometimes some of these brands are really looking like trolls. So yes.
I'm just imagining them like just wanting to have placement on Clubhouse where they're just in the room, they have their name as their logo. I mean, that's their brand name, and then their profile picture be the logo, and they're just sitting there with a moderator badge.
Oh
Follow
God.
us.
See, but that's how you have to be. See, on Clubhouse, you have to be even more human, because now you have to have a voice, you have to have a
Right.
personality, you have to have something. Like,
Yeah.
it's when somebody said on Clubhouse something really interesting. He said all these really pretty women on Instagram, and I'm just giving an example, but he said all these really beautiful women on Instagram, they're so used to getting all this attention for how they look, but when they come on Clubhouse, they realize very quickly that if they don't have a personality, it doesn't matter what they look like, people are not going to pay attention to them. And so it's the
Hello.
same thing for these brands. It's like, you can have a budget of millions of dollars, but if you don't have a personality, what are you going to do? So
No,
yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. So my last question. We've seen it across entertainment where content doesn't really resonate with the audience. People yearn for good content that's quote unquote real and not something just for ratings. What does real look like for you?
I think I touched on it a little. It looks like somebody. There's a story behind it. As humans, we're always telling each other stories. I mean, all the time. Even nature tells us a story. Everything is telling us a story. So, what story are you telling me, and how do I connect to your story? Am I connecting to your brand story? Am I connecting to your story that just happened to you today? Like, maybe you got an email from someone, from a client, and they said, you changed my life. So, I think for me, it's telling real stories and being honest. Honesty and trust is so important, at least for me as a person and as a social media strategist, working with brands that I can trust, and they have built trust with their followers and their fans, is really important. So for me, it's like being okay with making mistakes, being okay with entering into spaces and learning how to read the room. And I know we talk about that on Clubhouse a lot, reading the room, because sometimes these brands just enter into these spaces and don't know what's going on. So I think it's so important. It happened a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement that happened 2020 recently, where a lot of these brands were coming into the space and just, everyone was saying, oh, we support Black Lives Matter, we support. But what did you do a month ago? Were you supporting Black Lives Matter a month ago? No, you're just doing this for marketing. And so I think it's important to sometimes just shut up and don't say anything and just do things quietly and make internal changes. And then maybe 5 months later, come out and say, look, this is what we did. And so I think it's important that to me is real. So that's like, that's
Round of applause on that one. Standing ovation.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that was your TED Talk.
Yeah, thank you. My TED Talk. Oh, I could tell you stories, but yeah.
That is too funny. That is awesome. I really enjoyed the conversation, as I always do with you, Yulia, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule again to come on the SANE Show and offer up all that great insight and sharing with me and the listeners. Really quick before I let you go, if you could let the listeners know where they can find you so that they can keep tabs on everything that you're doing and all the cool stuff you have going on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. It's I love Yulia G. So Yulia is spelled Yulia. So I love Yulia, and then G for my last name. So that's my. And if you want to follow me on Clubhouse, it's I love YG, like the artist, the rapper. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's my Twitter, and my Instagram is I love Yulia G. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye. Thanks. See you on Clubhouse.
Yes. So listeners, be sure to check out Yulia. She's really awesome. Again, if you do catch her on Clubhouse, she definitely has some fun rooms. Color of your voice. Yeah, please. Again, thank you again, Yulia. Thank you again, listeners. Again, continue liking, sharing, and subscribing, spreading the word about SANE Show. And you guys are listening to SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. And until next time, we're out.